morning.
Good morning.
I had mentioned Eliezer. There we go. We don't start without Eliezer. All right, we got to go. Eliezer is the Mamuna al Hazum.
I'm trying to get the Rav to unmute himself. I don't think he needs to, I don't think he realizes it.
Going through the Avoda
Okay, good.
until we finish Maseches Tamid, which we are very close to finishing. So we'll do that at the end. We'll start from a Jew walking or a Kohen entering Yerushalayim and go straight through the Avoda from beginning to end. Mrs. Levitan sent me several questions yesterday by email, and I'm going to throw one out as a riddle to everyone. We mentioned yesterday that the menorah had 3 steps in front of it. On page 118, you have a picture of the menorah with 3 steps. Again, on page 123. And the Kohen would go on these steps to light the menorah. If you recall, when we were learning about the Mizbeach and the ramp to the Mizbeach, we learned the pasuk at the end of Parshas Yisro. At the end of Parshas Yisro, the last pasuk in Parshas Yisro, it says, "V'lo salav amalos al mizbechi asher lo sigola ervoscha olav." You are not to go up to the Mizbeach using steps. Rather, you must use a ramp. Asher lo sigola ervoscha olav. Because as you walk up steps to the Mizbeach, the Kohen would have to part his legs as you go up. And that's some form of Gilui Erva. As the person, the Kohen, is moving one leg up on the steps, his legs are spreading, and sort of he's exposing his Erva, he's exposing his private parts, although the Kohen was wearing a pair of pants. Rashi comments at any rate that you are not allowed to build steps to go up to the Mizbeach because of this concept of Gilui Erva. Now we know the Mizbeach was 9 amos high. When you add the corners of the Mizbeach, it was 10 amos high. The ramp was 32 amos long, 16 amos wide. But you can't have steps to get to the height of the Mizbeach because of this concept of Gilui Erva. So Mrs. Levitan asked the question, if you're not allowed to have steps going up to the Mizbeach, then why are you allowed to have steps that the Kohen steps up on in order to clean and light the menorah? So I'm going to point out the steps, and then I'm going to leave it up as a riddle to everyone to think what the answer would be to why there can't be steps at the Mizbeach. It must be a ramp, but there can be 3 steps to be able to climb up to reach the top of the menorah or above the menorah. But let's think about the question of steps in our diagram 3 Tamidos. There are steps all over the Har HaBayis and the Beis HaMikdash. There are steps in the Chel. In order to get up to the Ezras Noshim from the Har HaBayis, you had to walk up steps. The Ezras Noshim, as we learned, was 6 amos higher than the Har HaBayis. If you're in the Ezras Noshim, you had to walk up 15 steps to go into the Ezras Yisrael. In the Ezras Kohanim, there were the Duchan, which had steps. If you went further in, the Ulam had 12 steps to get into the Ulam. So there were a lot of steps in around the Beis HaMikdash in order to get into the Beis HaMikdash, in order to get into the Azor, in order to get different places. There were steps. And Kohanim would have to walk up the steps inside the Beis HaMikdash. So you need to focus on why there were steps at the menorah, there were steps all over the Harabayas, there were steps in the Beis HaMikdash that Kohanim would use. There seems to be a special prohibition not to use steps at the Mizbeach. So the answer is, as the Pasuk says at the end of Yisro, V'lo sala b'mailos al mizbechi. There's a prohibition to use steps to get to the top of the Mizbeach. There's a prohibition to use steps to ascend to the top of the Mizbeach. V'lo sala b'mailos al mizbechi asher lo sigol evos v'olav. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's rule for the Mizbeach. It is self-evident that it's not a rule in other places in the Beis HaMikdash. Fine, that's the answer to the question. The Ribbono Shel Olam said that for the Mizbeach, not at other places. The question then becomes, why is this a special rule at the Mizbeach and nowhere else? Hint, Rashi that we read when we're learning Maseches Midos, Rashi at the end of Parshas Yisro says that from here we learn a Kal V'chomer. We're talking about a ram and Mizbeach that are made out of stones. And the Ribbono Shel Olam is telling us when you ascend to the Mizbeach, don't ascend in a disrespectful way. Ascend using a ramp, not steps. Don't disrespect the place by having to part your legs and somehow exposing your private parts, even though the Kohen was wearing pants. And if you have to be so sensitive to stones, Kal V'chomer, how sensitive you have to be to the feelings of another human being. That's what Rashi says at the Parsha, last pasuk in Yisro, about not ascending the Mizbeach using steps, but rather a ramp. From there, you can start thinking about, we know there were steps everywhere else, including at the menorah, to get into the Hazorah, to get into the Ulam. Why in those places did the Ribbono Shel Olam not say ramps? Why did he say steps are okay there? But at the Mizbeach, we learn out a special lesson that one should be sensitive to stones. Certainly one should be sensitive to his friends. Why was that left as a lesson at the Mizbeach? We opened that up for comments and people to think about why the Mizbeach was different than all the other places in the Beis HaMikdash in terms of steps. Okay. Where we're up to right now, we're going to read the last words of the Mishnah that we learned yesterday, which is the last words in Perek Dalet, Mishnah Gimel. It's on page 17 of V'hasheves Havoda. Where are we up to? We learned yesterday how the Kohen cleaned the menorah. He came in and he cleaned the 5 westernmost sticks, left the first 2 sticks alone, and went through the possible alternatives. The first 2 were lit and the last 5 were extinguished. They were all extinguished. We went through all the rules. Bottom line, the Hatovas HaMenorah, cleaning out the menorah, took 2 phases. Clean out the western 5 sticks, leave the first 2 eastern sticks alone, stop. The Kohen who was cleaning the menorah left the Heichel. Then the shechita of the korban tamid occurred, the collection of the blood, bringing the blood to the Mizbeach, splashing the 2 splashes at the corners of the opposite corners of the Mizbeach, as we learned about yesterday, northeast and southwest. 2 splashes hit all 4 corners. Shiorei Hadam, the leftover blood, was poured into the hole in the southern foundation of the Mizbeach, which we took a picture of yesterday. Now that that avoda is done, the shechita of the korban, and the zrikas hadam, our Kohen, who is the fourth winner of Lottery 2, he goes back into the Heichal, and he's going to clean the last two easternmost sticks of the menorah. Accompanying him into the Heichal is going to be winner number 3 of Lottery number 2, who cleaned the Mizbeach HaKtores. Together, they're going to take their bowls out of the Heichal, and now before they leave the Heichal, they're going to do a Hishtach Havaya, because when you finish an avoda, you do a Hishtach Havaya, you bow. And they both left together with their bowls. Winner number 4 has a bowl of oil and wicks and ash. Winner number 3 has ash and some leftover incense. They both left the Heichal and they went to the eastern side of the ramp. They both poured their bowls at the base Hadesh and on the eastern side of the ramp. A miracle occurred. 1, all the ash, all the oil was absorbed into the marble floor. That's where we're up to. And then we learned about the 9 other winners of Lottery 2. We've dealt with the first 4 winners. The first winner was who's going to shech the korban tamid. The second winner was who's going to collect the blood and take the blood to the mizbeach and splash it on the mizbeach. Winner number 3 is who's going to clean the mizbeach haktoris. Winner number 4 is who's going to clean the menorah. And these 4 kohanim, the 4 winners, have all done their work. Again, the first 4 winners are declared in that order. You are winner 1, you are winner 2, you are winner 3, you are winner 4, but that's not the order of the avoda. Winner 3 and number 4 clean the mizbeach and the menorah before the shchitas hakorban and the sprinkling of the blood. At any rate, the first 4 are done. The cleaning of the inner mizbeach has occurred, the cleaning of the menorah has occurred, the shechita has occurred, and the zrikas hadam has occurred. We're now up to the last 9 winners of the second lottery, and those are the winners who are going to bring 9 different things to the lower half of the ramp of the mizbeach. We learned about that yesterday. 6 of those 9 winners brought different parts of the korban to the ramp. You didn't bring the korban, the parts of the animal, immediately up the ramp to put on the fire to be consumed. That was not done. First, you put the 6 kohanim, took the different parts and put them on the lower half of the ramp. The last 3 winners, 1 would bring the flour for the korban mincha, 1 would bring 6 of the 12 chalas of the chavitim of the Kohen Gadol, and the last 1 would bring the wine. So we have 13 winners. We now have on the ramp of the mizbeach animal parts, flour, the chavitim of the Kohen Gadol, 6 of them, and the wine. On the ramp, there was salt that was placed there earlier, and the kohanim who brought our 9 winners went to the ramp, put it on the ramp, and salted everything except for winner 13. He did not salt the wine. Everything else, the body parts of the animal, the flour, which already had oil in it, and the Kohen's 6 chalos were all salted, because nothing gets consumed on a mizbeach. We learned that out from Pasuk in Vayikra. Nothing gets consumed on the mizbeach without being salted, with the exception of the wine in this case. And these 6 kohanim, or these 9 kohanim, with the exception of the Kohen who brought the wine, they made sure that everything was salted. They flipped the animal parts to make sure it was well salted on all sides. Stop. And that's where we're up to. The 9 things are on the ramp. 6 kohanim brought 6 sets of animal parts. The flour is there. The 6 chalas of the Kohen Gadol are there. And the wine is there. Left on the lower half of the ramp. Stop, pause. And those are the last words in Perek Dalet, Mishnah Gimel, on page 17. Holchu unesona mechatzi hakevesh ulamata b'ma'aravo umalachu. The last 9 winners brought the animal parts, the flour, the 6 chalos of the kohen gadol, and the wine to the western lower half of the ram, and they salted it, again, except for the wine in this case. Stop. V'yardu uvoy lahem l'lishkas hagazis. They then all went back to the lishkas hagazis. Where's the lishkas hagazis? Lishkas hagazis is the northern side of the Azara. Diagram 3, Midos. Lishkas hagazis. Where were these Kohanim? These Kohanim were here. They had just brought the animal parts and the other things, the flour, the Kohen's 6 chalos, and the wine, and they left it on the lower half of the ram. They then left this area and went to the Lishkas Hagazis. And in this Lishkas Hagazis, you basically now have all the Kohanim of the base Av. Today is Monday. Mishma Reuven reported last night. They went to sleep in the base Hamoked. Lined will go through the whole thing again when we finish the Masechta. All the Kohanim are awake by now. And they're all in the Lishkas Hagazis, this large chamber where the Sanhedrin met. Some of the Kohanim who are in the Lishkas Hagazis are the ones that just came in. They're the 13 winners of Lottery 2. In the Lishkas Hagazis is also now our winner of Lottery 1 who did the Trumas Hadeshen. And in the Lishkas Hagazis, there are Kohanim from Monday's base Av, Monday of this week, and they're all gathered there. Some of them won, 13 of them won Lottery 2. And they shechted one of them shechted the animal, one of them sprinkled the blood, one cleaned the Mizbeach Haktoris, one cleaned the menorah, and 9 of them put things on the ram, and now they're all back in Lishkas Hagazis, our 13 winners of Lottery 2. Our winner of Lottery 1 is there too, and there are a whole bunch of Kohanim in there who haven't won any lottery yet. They've not done any real avod in the Beis Hamikdash yet, and this is their chance. It's today. Because if they don't do avoda today and there's no overflow avoda during this week, they're not going to do avoda for another 24 weeks until the Mishmer comes back and the next Monday arrives in that 24-week rotation. So all the Kohanim of the base Av, the winners and those who have not won yet, are now in the Lishkas Hagazis. Yardu uvo lahem lishkas hagazis. They now came to Lishkas Hagazis, and everything's put on pause. The avod in the Beis Hamikdash is on pause. The 9 things around the ramp of the Mizbeach, likros eshma. They came into the Lishkas Hagazis. Right now, it's called to read Shema, quote unquote. But in the next parak we're going to learn today, it's actually to daven a very abridged davening. Before they brought the animal parts and the other things, the flour, the kohen's 6 chalos, the wine to pour on the mizbeach. Before they did any of that, they would do an abridged davening. There are different reasons why they took this pause to daven right now. One of the reasons is that right now it is time. The halachic time to read Kriya Shema has arrived, and since these Kohanim are going to be busy for a little bit more time to finish the avodah of the Karmel Shel Shachar, there's still things to do, and we're worried that they'll get very involved in the avodah and they'll forget to say Kriya Shema on time. The time will pass, so this is a place to pause and get the Kriya Shema in now, since it is the time to read Kriya Shema. And then we'll proceed with the avoda, with bringing the things that are on the ramp up to the top of the mizbeach for consumption in the fire. Another reason they pause now is that before you actually bring the korban, meaning there's a shrita, there's sprinkling the blood, but before you actually bring the korban to be consumed on the fire of the mizbeach, it was appropriate to be mispalo. We're going to soon see what they daven. They said avoda. They said a bracha that the Rebbeinu Shalom should be makabel the avoda. So before they actually put the animal parts and the other remaining items on the mizbeach for consumption, they stopped and made a bracha. Rebbeinu Shalom, please accept our avoda. It's another reason. The Ravid has a very interesting reason. The Ravid says that they paused at this point because they just put the animal parts on the ram and salted them. And by taking a pause to daven, even though it's a short davening, it gave the salt an opportunity to salt the meat well and draw out the blood that wasn't necessary to be brought on top of the mizbeach. So there are different reasons for this pause now in the middle of the korban, leaving the limbs and the other parts, leaving the limbs and the other items on the ram, and pausing now for Kohanim to say Kriya Shema and to say their abridged davening. Okay, so we're going to start the next parak, but I'm going to introduce you now to a machlokas we're going to see later. After davening, the next thing that's going to happen is a Kohen who's going to be the winner of lottery 3. Remember, we said there are 4 lotteries every day in the Beis Hamikdash, only in the morning. The winner of the morning gets to do the same thing in the afternoon. The Kohen who shechted the korban tamid shel shacha, winner 1 of lottery 2, he's going to shecht the korban tamid shel bein harbayim. Winner 2 of lottery 2, who splashed the blood on the mizbeach for the korban tamid in the morning, he's going to splash the blood for the korban tamid in the afternoon. Now, there are 4 lotteries in the morning. We learned about lottery 1. That's 1 winner. Which Kohen is going to do Trumas Hadeshin? The little shovel full of ash off the mizbeach. Lottery number 2, we just learned about 13 winners. The Shochet, the Zoreh, cleaner of the mizbeach, Haktores, cleaner of the menorah in 2 phases. 6 Kohanim who brought the animal part to the ram. Another Kohen who brought flour to the ram, another Kohen who brought the Kohen Gadol 6 challahs for the morning to the ram. There'll be another 6 challahs in the afternoon, and the Kohen who brought the wine to the ram. So lottery number 2 has 13 winners. Lottery number 3 is who is going to be zoicha to bring the incense on the mizbeach. The mizbeach HaTorah has been cleaned by lottery winner 3 of lottery 2, and now it's ready for Ketores to be brought. We're going to have another lottery, that's the 3rd lottery of the day, of who is going to bring the Ketores on the Mizbeach. And that was done after they finished their abridged davening. Now there's going to be lottery 4. Lottery 4 is who is going to bring the animal parts, the flour, the 6 Kohen Gadol chalos, the wine. Who is going to bring that to the top of the Mizbeach? That's lottery 4. There's a machlokes if there was a lottery 4, which we'll learn in the Mishnah not today. We paskin there was a lottery 4, meaning that the 9 Kohanim who brought all the body parts and the flour and the 6 Kohen Gadol chalas and the wine and left it on the ram, they're done. Another Kohen or other Kohanim are going to actually now take those 9 things and bring it to the top of the Mizbeach for consumption. That's a lottery number 4. So in that lottery number 4, there's a machlokes, and that's a machlokes rishonim. There's a machlokes tanoim in the Mishnah if there was a lottery 4. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds there's no lottery 4. the 6 Kohanim or the 9 Kohanim who put the things on the ram after the davening and after bringing the new incense, those same 9 winners actually now brought everything to the top of the Mizbeach. And therefore there was no need for a 4th lottery. We don't paskin like that. We paskin that there was a 4th lottery for who will take these 9 items and bring them to the top of the Mizbeach. In this Shita, there's now a machlokas rishonim whether the 4th lottery had 1 winner, meaning that the 9 things that were left on the ram by the 9 winners of lottery 2, there's 1 winner of lottery 3 who will take everything to the top of the Mizbeach. Other rishonim hold, no. Other rishonim say that the 3rd lottery was for 9 new winners. And these 9 new winners would take what was on the ram and bring it up to the Mizbeach. The point I'm making right now is that there was a pause in the avoda at this point. We had a pause with the cleaning of the menorah. Now we have a pause in the actual hakrovas hakorban. The 9 items are on the ram. Stop. Everybody, all the kohanim are in the lishkas hagazis, and everybody's going to say Kriya Shema and do an abridged davening. Then they're going to be makdir the ketores, a kohen, the winner of lottery 3 will be makdir the ketores, and then there'll be a lottery 4 about how to get the 9 different things on the ram to the top of the mizbeach, and those are your 4 lotteries. Lottery 1, 1 winner for Trumas Hadeshin. Lottery 2, 13 winners for the carbon. Lottery 3, 1 Kohen who will bring the Ketores today. Lottery 4, which Kohen or which 9 Kohanim will bring the things on the ram up to the Mizbeach for consumption. So right now we're at the pause. The 9 items are on the ram, and the Kohanim are all gathered in the Lishkas Hagazis, and they're going to daven an abridged davening. Okay, so there's a question here about the unconsumed animal parts. No, the unconsumed animal parts from yesterday, we learned about the winner of the first lottery who did the Trumas Hadeshin. He also set up the logs. And after the logs were set up for the Maracha Gedola and the Maracha Shel Ketores, after the logs were set up, according to the order we learned, then the animal parts from yesterday that were not consumed were put back on the Maracha Gedola. Our winner number 1 lit the fire. Those animal parts from yesterday were then consumed, and then our winner number 1 threw those additional 2 pieces of wood, the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, on the Maracha. Okay, we're only talking right now about today's carbon. We're not talking about any animal parts from yesterday. Those were already dealt with by our first Kohen. All right, let's see what happened here. Okay. Perek Hey. We're on page 17 of Ahashev Esavoda. Amalahem Hamamuna. So whenever we see the word Mamuna, we say a supervisor. And Yetz Hashem, one day we'll go to the Mishnah in Shkolim, where the Mishnah lists the 15 supervisors in the Beis Hamikdash and their names. We learned some of their names, and everyone who took their place after they retired or they were nifter took on that name. So, for example, we learned about Gebini Cruz. Gebini, who was the announcer, he woke everyone up in the morning by announcing time to get up, and his voice was heard till Yericho. Gebini Cruz. We learned about Ben Bibi, the person who was the Kohen in charge of checking to see if any Kohen fell asleep while he was guarding the Beis Hamikdash. There are 15 of these supervisors of the Beis Hamikdash. So when we see the word Mamuna, what triggers in our mind is we're dealing with one of these 15 supervisors. There are times where Mamuna does not mean a supervisor. This is one of the places where it does not necessarily mean a supervisor. This is talking about the Sgan Kohen Gadol, the assistant Kohen Gadol. The assistant Kohen Gadol now said to all the Monday Kohanim of this week's Mishmar, Baruchu bracha achas. Make one bracha. What bracha? We'll come back to this. V'hei baruchu. And the Kohanim made that one bracha. Karu aseres hadvorim. They then read the 10 commandments. We don't do this anymore. We'll talk about it. We don't read the 10 commandments in davening. In fact, we're not permitted to read the 10 commandments in davening. Shema. Then they said Shema. V'hoya im shemoa. They said the second parsha of Kriya Shema of V'hoya im shemoa. Vayomer. They said the third parsha of Kriya Shema Vayomer. Berhu es ha'am shalosh brachos. This does not mean that they duchened. It does not mean that they blessed the people with the 3 brachos. It means they blessed with the people 3 brachos. Meaning, if there were any other people in the Beis Hamikdash other than the Kohanim, they joined in with these 3 brachos. This is not duchening. What are the 3 brachos that the Kohanim said? Emes v'yatziv after Kriya Shema, and Emes v'yatziv is a long bracha. We don't think about it as a bracha, but it's a bracha. Emes v'yatziv after Kriya Shema ends Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, and then you begin Hashem Svasai Tiftach Ofiyagiti Lasecha. Emes v'yatziv is a bracha. We don't think of it as a bracha because it doesn't start Baruch Atah Hashem Lokeinu Melech Olam, but we have a lot of brachas that don't start with Baruch Atah Hashem Lokeinu Melech Olam. Ahava Rabbah, Ahavas Olam, Hashkivenu. We have plenty of brachas that don't start with a Baruch Atah Hashem, and they have their own halachic rules. Emes v'yatziv is a bracha. It ends Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. So that's the first of the 3 brachas. V'avoda, and they made the bracha of avoda. In our Shmona Esrei, avoda is V'tzei Hashem Elokeinu b'amcha Yisrael v'sfilasam she'ei v'hashev es ha'avoda lidvir beisecha. The bracha we spoke about last week. It would be nice if we can pause during Shmona Esrei at those words. Now that we learn Maseches Tamid and we're learning Maseches Tamid, v'hashev es ha'avoda lidvir beisecha. Pause in the Shmona Esrei and think about what does avoda mean in the Beis Hamikdash. V'isha Yisrael usilasam meheira b'avat kal b'ratzon usila ratzon tamen avodah Yisrael amecha. That bracha of avodah that we make is the bracha avodah after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. We're asking the Rebbeinu Shalom to v'hashev es ha'avodah v'beisecha, return the avodah to the Beis Hamikdash. It's a post-Churban bracha of avodah. When the Beis Hamikdash was standing, and the Kohanim were actually doing avoda, the bracha was completely different. And there are 2 nuschois possible that are brought down as the bracha. One is, Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu, avodas amcha Yisrael. Rebbeinu Shalom, please accept the avoda. V'ishe Yisrael usfilasam ke'abel b'ratzon. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Atah Hashem, hamakabel avodas amo Yisrael b'ratzon. So it's a present tense bracha. The Beis Hamikdash is standing. The Kohanim have just left the animal parts and the other items on the ram. They're in the middle of the avoda. So they're in the Beis Hamikdash. They're not praying that the Beis Hamikdash be rebuilt and the avoda be returned. They're praying in the present that the avoda we're doing should be accepted. And as we mentioned before, this is one of the reasons for the pause in Hakrovas HaKorban before the animal is brought to the top of the Mizbeach for consumption in the fire. We want to make this bracha. Rebbeinu Shalom, accept our avoda. So that's one of the reasons for the pause. Ubirkis Kohanim, And then they said the three brachas of Yivarecha. This too is not duchening. They are in the Lishkas Hagozis, northern side of the Azara. We have already learned that when Kohanim do the actual duchening with Nesias Kapayim, lifting up their hands, the only place for duchening with Nesias Kapayim is on the 12 steps of the Ulam. Diagram 3, Midos, 12 steps to go to the Ulam. The Kohanim stood on these 12 steps, lifted up their hands, and duchen. Right now, the Kohanim are nowhere near the Ulam. They're in the Lishkas Hagozis in the northern wall, northern side of the Azara, and they're davening. And as part of their davening, they said, "Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yir Hashem panav elecha v'yikonecha, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yikonecha, v'yasem v'chashon." This is not duchening. This is, they said, the Berachos Kohanim without Nesias Kapayim. Nesias Kapayim is going to happen later in the day on the steps of the Ulam. Uva Shabbos, and on Shabbos, Mosif and Brocha Achas. This is beautiful. We mentioned that there was a change in the Mishmoros. When did they switch? Every 24 weeks. When did they switch? Shabbos afternoon. This week's Mishmor would have come this past Shabbos, and they would have started their avoda Shabbos afternoon. They would work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos morning, stop. The next Mishmar, this Shabbos, would come and pick up in the afternoon. What was the break? The break was the old Mishmar brought the Korban Tamid Shal Shachar Shabbos morning. The new Mishmar would pick up with the Korban Tamid Shal Bein Harbayim the afternoon of Shabbos, and the afternoon, the new Mishmar would also be responsible for the Bazichin, the 2 cups of Levona, the 2 cups of incense that were on the Shulchan that had the Lechem Apanim that we talked about. They would take those 2 cups of Levona incense, bring it to the Mizbeach outside, the large Mizbeach, and they would burn it on the Mizbeach. So the Kohanim who came this week would work through Shabbos morning and the Korban Tamid of Shabbos morning and the Korban Musaf of Shabbos. By the time the Korban Tamid of the afternoon came, the new Mishmar picked up, and they picked up with the Korban Tamid Shal Bein Harbayim, the afternoon Korban Tamid, and they also did the Bazichin, those 2 cups of incense that were on the Shulchan, and they brought them to the Mizbeach for burning. These 2 groups of Kohanim are going to meet Shabbos during the day. The Mishmar that's finishing its work and the Mishmar that's going to start its work. So the Mishnah says, over Shabbos, on Shabbos, Mosif and Bracha Achas, an additional bracha was said, Lemishmar Hayotze, to the exiting Mishmar. And the Gemara explains the blessing. Who blessed who? The Gemara says, Mishmar Hayotze Omer Bracha LeMishmar Nichnas. The Mishmar that just finished its week of Avodah blessed the incoming Kohanim. They would say, Mi Shashike Neshemoi Babayis Hazeh, God who rests his name in this house, who Yashkin Beinechem Ava Va'achva V'Shalom V'Reyus. Sounds like a Sheva Brachas. The God who rests his name in this house, may he rest amongst you love, brotherhood, peace, and friendliness. So the Kohanim who finished their work for the week would bless the Kohanim who are coming in and say, may Rabbonu Shalom make peace, friendship, love amongst all of you. Why? For the reason we discussed so many times, the Mefarshim said. The Kohanim, the Mishmar came only every 24 weeks to the Beis HaMikdash to do Avodah. And when they arrived, they were split into 6 Batei Avod. And each of them only had 1 day. On Shabbos, they all worked together, Lefi Pshuta. So it's every 24 weeks, and every 24 weeks, it's just really 1 day. So God forbid fights can break out as to who's going to do what avoda. And that's one of the reasons, remember, they instituted the first pious with the machta, because there were fights on the ram. Kohanim were pushing each other off. So the Kohanim arrive every 24 weeks to do the avoda, and chas v'shalom, there shouldn't be fights among them who's doing what, who's going first, who's going second. So the Kohanim who finish their avoda for the week would bless the incoming Kohanim and say, the God who rests his name in this house, may he rest amongst you friendship, love, and brotherhood. So you should be zeicha to do the avodah this week in the Beis Hamikdash without any machlokes. Just do the avodah without any machlokes. Going back to the beginning of the Mishnah says that the Mamuna, the assistant Kohen Gadol, said, Baruch hu bracha achas, make one bracha. And then it says they read the Aseres Hadibros, and then it says they read Kriya Shema. What is this one bracha? The one bracha that they said is a Hava Rabbah. It's a question of Gemara in Brachas, a question of Gemara here. The Gemara's maskana is basically, we say two brachas before Kriya Shema. We start in the morning, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam yotze or v'rei choshech oseh shalom u'roi es hakol hameir la'oretz. That bracha ends, Baruch atah Hashem yotzer hama'oros. That's one long bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam yotzer or u'roi choshech, and it ends Baruch atah Hashem yotzer hama'oros with a lot of paragraphs in between, but that's one long bracha. The second bracha before Kriya Shema is a Hava Rabbah or a Havas Olam, whatever your Nosechat Tefillah is. There are two brachas that are said every day in the morning before Kriya Shema. Baruch atah Hashem Yotzer HaMa'oros, Baruch atah Hashem Habocher B'Amo Yisrael Ba'ava. And every day in the morning there's one bracha after Kriya Shema. Baruch atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. So there are three brachas around Kriya Shema. Two before Kriya Shema, Baruch atah Hashem Yotzer HaMa'oros, Baruch atah Hashem Habocher B'Amo Yisrael Ba'ava, and one after Kriya Shema, Baruch atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. Of these three brachos, the Kohanim only said two. They said one before Kriya Shema, and that's what it says in the Mishnah. The assistant Kohen Gadol said, make the one bracha. What bracha is that? Ahava Rabbah. It was too early, even though they were able to say Kriya Shema, it was still too early to say Yotzer Or. There was enough light in the sky to say Kriya Shema, because Kriya Shema, the Gemara tells us, doesn't depend on daylight. Kriya Shema depends on B'shachbacha uvukumecha, waking up and going to sleep. People wake up early. So the saying Kriya Shema can be said earlier because people get up earlier. Then the bracha which says Yotzer HaMa'oros, you create light. I need to see a good portion of light in the sky before I can say Yotzer HaMa'oros, even though I can already read Kriya Shema, Yotzer HaMa'oros I wouldn't say. That's a sugya in itself when you can say the bracha and when you can say Kriya Shema. But in the Beis Hamikdash, where the Kohanim are in a rush to do the avoda, and we don't want them to get over-involved in the avoda and miss the Zman Kriya Shema, as soon as it's possible to say Kriya Shema, the earliest time, which is Amud HaShachar dawn, we tell them, come into the Lishkas Hagazis now. It's a little after dawn. Come into the Lishkas Hagazis. Make the bracha. Which one? Ahava Rabbah. You can't say Yotzer HaMa'oros yet. It's too early. There's not enough light in the sky. Did they say Yotzer HaMa'oros later? Okay, that's a question of the Gemara. Maybe they said it later. But when the Mishnah says that they were told to make a bracha, it was Ahava Rabbah, Baruch atah Hashem Habocher B'Amo Yisrael Ba'ava. After that, they read the 10 Commandments. After that, they read the 3 parshas of Kriya Shema. After that, they said Emes V'Yatziv, Baruch atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. They did not say Shmona Esrei. They only said Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu B'Amcha Yisrael Esra Avoda. They said it in present tense. They said Yivarecha Hashem v'Yishmerecha and the other two psukim, and that was it. Did they say Shmona Esrei later? Shaila. But that's what they did. That's the abridged version of their davening. While the 9 things are on the ram, pause, go into the Lishkas Hagazis, say Ahava Rabbah, not Yotzar Ma'oros, too early. Say the 10 Commandments, then say the 3 parashas of Kriya Shema, then say Emes V'Yatziv, which ends Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael. Very strange. Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael. But say Hashem Elokeinu B'Amcha Yisrael. No Hashem Svosai Tifta, no Magen Avram, nothing. Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael. Would say Hashem Elokeinu B'Amcha Yisrael. V'tekabel Ba'ava et Avoda. And then they said the 3 brachas for Birchas Kohanim in Lishkas Hagazis without lifting their hands. This is not Nesiyas Kapayim. Nesiyas Kapayim is on the 12 steps of the Ulam later in the day. So we now know what that bracha achas was. The bracha achas was Ahava Rabbah. Did they say Yotzei Ma'oros later? A question. Did they say a full Shemona Esrei later? A question. But they had to get in the Kriya Shema as early as possible so that the time wouldn't pass, and they got involved in the Avoda and Chas v'Shalom missed the time. And they didn't abridge Shemona Esrei. I don't even know if you call it abridge Shemona Esrei. They said Baruch Atah Hashem Go'al Yisrael and would say, and the 3 brachas of Birchas Kohanim without Nesiyas Kapayim. The last point for today in this Mishnah is Karu Aseres Hadron. They said Aseres Hadibros. The Gemara says that they will mavatal this takana at some point in Bovel. They will mavatal this Seder Hatfilah. We don't say 10 commandments before Kriya Shema. Mepnei tarumas haminim. So minim usually means apikursim or the early Catholics. Rashi says sometimes apikursim, minim, sometimes the early Catholics. We stopped making the Aseres Hadibros part of the daily davening. And that's because we ran into problems. People who are apikursim or the early Catholics would say, this is proof that the only real Torah are the 10 commandments. Because this was selected to say by the Jewish people. The rest of it is Moshe wrote it or someone else wrote it. The only thing that they established to absolutely say in davening are the 10 commandments. So the 10 commandments is the only thing that's important. The rest of it is Moshe stuff. So Mepnei Tarumas Haminim, they stopped this whole thing. And it's halacha in Shulchan Aruch. You're not allowed to say the 10 commandments, but tzibur. In other words, somebody tomorrow wants to be masakin, that we're going to say the 10 commandments all together during davening. You're not allowed to do that. That's the kana of Chazal, Mipnei Tarumas Haminim, we don't do it. It's a shaila in Shulchan Aruch, whether privately you can say the 10 commandments. It sounds like in Shulchan Aruch you can say it. That's a machlokes haposkim. But this is where it comes from. The original Nusach HaTfilah had the Birchas Kriya Shema, before Kriya Shema, Aseres Hadibros, and then Kriya Shema. We cut out and the reason why we said the Aseres Hadibros originally is to remind us of all 613 mitzvahs, because Aseres Hadibros are 10 roots from which all 613 mitzvahs grow. In fact, in the back of a Shavuos Machzor, if it's still printed that way, there is a pismon, a piyut, that lists all the mitzvahs under every one of the 10 commandments. So under Anochi Hashem Elokecha, it'll have all the mitzvahs of the 630 mitzvahs that flow, blossom, grow out of commandment 1. Lo commandment number 2, you shall not have another God. All the 630 mitzvahs that fall under that general rubric of commandment number 2. And when you read the 10 commandments, you read this pismon in the back of Machzor on Shavuos, you end up reading 613 mitzvahs that grow out of the 10 commandments. So this is a reason they put the 10 commandments in before Kriya Shema, just to remind us of all 613 mitzvahs every day. When it became problematic that the Minim said, this is the only Torah that there is, 10 commandments. The rest of it they don't even read in davening. This battle, the Gemara even tells us that there were Amoraim that tried to reinstitute the minig and start reading the Aseres Hadibros again, and they were told not to do it. So that's where we are right now. the 9 different, the 9 items are on the ramp of the Mizbeach. The Kohanim are in the Lishkas Hagazis. They said Ahavarabba. They said Aseret Sadibris. They said the 3 parshas of Kriya Shema. They said the Emes Fiyat said Brochat Hashem Goal Yisrael. They said Ritzei, and they said the 3 psukim of Birchas Kohanim without Nasias Kapayim. On Shabbos, they would add another bracha. The Mishmar that finished the work this week would say to the Mishmar that's starting, Misha Shiken Shmoy Babayas Hazeh Hu Yashkin Beinechem Ava V'Acha V'Shalom B'Reis. You should have a week of brotherly love, of cooperation. You shouldn't have fights about who's going to do the avoda. Just do the avoda. Don't have fights. And Zaygesund. So that was the other bracha that they added on Shabbos. The Mishmar leaving to the Mishmar entering. That's where we are right now. They've now finished their davening. The 9 items are still on the ramp. They're going to leave them there. We're going to learn tomorrow about the 3rd lottery, and that's for the Kohen who's going to bring the incense for today into the Heichel in the Mizbeach HaKtoras. That's the 3rd lottery. And then after that, there's going to be the 4th lottery for who is going to bring the 9 items on the ramp up to the Mizbeach. There's a machlokes. Is it one Kohen that brought it all up, so that lottery 4 has only 1 winner? Or does the lottery 4 have multiple winners to bring the items up to the Mizbeach? And there's a machlokes, as I mentioned, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says there is no 4th lottery. The same Kohanim who brought the materials, the items to the ramp, after the pause, they would bring them to the top of the Mizbeach. What is the machlokas? What are the different logics? Why do we hold that a different Kohen or a different set of Kohanim should bring it to the top of the Mizbeach? Why does Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov hold that the same Kohanim who brought it to the ramp should bring it to the top of the ramp? We'll learn about that when we get to the Mishnah. But that's where we're up to Mi'achem to begin tomorrow. The Kohanim have davened in the Lishkas Hagazis. The 9 items are still on the ramp and will remain there. And tomorrow we'll begin with the 3rd lottery for the Ketoras, during which the 9 items will remain on the ramp.